The Defense Innovation Unit, or DIU, was established to accelerate the adoption of commercial technology throughout the U.S. military to ensure our forces continue to have a technological advantage over our adversaries and competitors. DIU partners with organizations across the Department of Defense, from the services and components to combatant commands and fourth estate agencies, to rapidly prototype and field advanced commercial solutions. DIU is the only DoD organization focused exclusively on fielding and scaling commercial technology across the U.S. military at the speed of relevance. The DIU is focused on 6 technology areas where the commercial sector is leading the way: artificial intelligence, autonomy, cyber and telecommunications, energy, human systems, and space. I'm excited to introduce my latest guest, who's going to give us a better understanding of this innovative capability. Today we're joined by DIU Liaisons Officer to the United States Marine Corps, Lieutenant Colonel Glenn McCartan. Welcome to the show, Glenn.
Great, thanks for having me.
I will be honest, I don't know that much about the DIU, and so one of the things I love about this part of my job is learning more about everything we do. And so this is going to be a great learning experience for me and hopefully for a lot of our listeners. So before we dive in, tell us more about who you are, your background, and why you joined the Marine Corps.
Absolutely. So I've been in for over 22 years now, mix of active duty and reserve. I'm currently an activated reservist, so coming from the National Capital Region. I am currently DIU's primary liaison to the Marine Corps. So my sole job is to focus on Marine Corps equities and Marine Corps issues. I'm here full-time on activated orders. I've been so for about 2 years now, really trying to help spread the gospel of commercial technology and how DIU can help and assist our programs really kind of accelerate the adoption of this technology and just really do it through streamlined processes. I'm a combat engineer by background, 1302. Did about 2 tours in Iraq when I was a young man, some 20-something years now ago. Got out in 2009 after a short stint on recruiting duty up in New York City. Did some of reserve time, did company command and leadership positions. Spent some time on the Joint Staff as well. And then during the civilian side of the house, I worked for the Defense Threat Reduction Agency and for the Defense Security Cooperation Agency, where my most recent stint is doing a lot of foreign military sales. So very familiar with kind of the acquisition community and working with the complexities of fielding capabilities. My emphasis was specifically on working with foreign partners, but it was a natural fit. I had a colleague of mine call me up and say, we need somebody who kind of understands this odd world of acquisition sometimes, but also understands kind of the joint community with some of the operations background. So great opportunity. I thought it was a great organization. So I put my hand up and the uniform back on.
Glad to have you. 22 years. Thank you for those 22 years, and we all appreciate your service. So most people are probably not familiar with the DIU itself. What can you tell us more about what the DIU is, what it does, and what's your role in there?
DIU is a joint entity. We fall under the OSD Research and Engineering, so OSD R&E. So we are an actual government agency.
Okay.
I think it's just funny you have to say that because some people think like, okay, are you a consortium? Are you some like a venture capital firm? Like, what are you? Are you a private entity? No, we're a U.S. government entity, fully appropriated by Congress, and our focus is really that, as you said in the title there, it's to help our partners, specifically the services, how to adopt commercial technology for use. So rather than try to reinvent the iPhone, our focus here is about how do we adopt that iPhone for our use and do it in a very streamlined way. So what's good about us is not just about the commercial technology nexus, but also very streamlined processes, because we use strictly other transaction authority, OTA,
okay, right.
Which really gives us an ability to move very fast in a very deliberate way. Not recklessly, but just an alternative way, which I think a lot of people are just unfamiliar with, specifically with federal acquisition regulation, which has a very drawn out process to itself, and it was built for a specific reason. But OTA was kind of built for, and what we were built for was to actually help get after these problem sets with technology and capability solutions that normally that we would never have thought to consider just because we never had access to it or we just thought it was too complex to engage. So DIU was kind of born in that whole spirit to kind of really, how do we bridge between these two communities? How do we bridge between the commercial sector, specifically the non-traditional firms that never have thought to work with DIU, with the U.S. government or DoD, and how do we kind of bridge them together and do it in a very streamlined way to kind of get these parties to get together to coordinate and maybe potentially even do a prototype together.
Where does DIU fall within the defense establishment? Are you under OSD or where does DIU?
So we fall under OSD, Research and Engineering, under Secretary Heidi Shue. So she's the primary. So that's what we fall under. We're a joint entity. So we support all services and all of Fourth Estate, to include all of U.S. government in that matter. So, and we really have our headquarters is located out in Silicon Valley in Moffett Field. That's kind of our spiritual headquarters, as I call it, but we do have presence across the country because we know good ideas kind of percolate everywhere. So we also have offices in Washington, D.C., up in the Pentagon, small presence, but our field offices are also in Austin, Texas, Boston, Massachusetts, and Chicago.
Okay, so thanks for clarifying that. You use a lot of acquisition words. Are you an acquisition MOS Marine?
I am not an acquisition Marine, but I've stayed in a Holiday Inn Express last night.
So you can dabble a little. All right.
Enough to be dangerous.
Excellent. So when you use the word emerging technologies, what exactly do you mean there?
So emerging technologies can run the gamut, of new ideas, new capabilities that are kind of being developed that are focusing on what we consider 6 portfolios that we put it under. You kind of touched on it earlier. So we couched it under the 6, which is cyberspace, human systems, energy, who else am I forgetting?
Autonomy.
There we go. And I'm forgetting my 6th one. AI, thank you, on top of it. So that's kind of how we organize ourselves, but that's kind of where we focus on in terms of emerging technology. We know that there's new technologies emerging all the time, but that's kind of how we categorize them.
So when you go to look at a technology, are you trying to hit on a specific existing requirement, or is it just experimentation?
The beauty of DIU's approach, it's not necessarily requirements driven. We're actually just focusing on what is the problem you're trying to solve. And really, I think that's kind of where some of the misconception is in our approach, is that we're just going out and we're scouring technologies on your behalf, and then we're coming back and say, hey, look at this flashy new thing. It's actually just kind of the opposite. Our approach is, hey, really get down to what is the issue at hand? What is the problem you're trying to solve? And it's non-requirements based. So we're not thinking through the traditional acquisition approach in that regards. And the reason we do that is we take that problem statement and then we really just put it out to industry, because that's how commercial industry does it.
Right.
And that approach. And the reason being is we lower the barrier to entry to make it easier to engage. And when we look at a technology, our first focus is, how does that technology solve the problem you're trying to get after? So we spent an enormous amount of time, probably some people say too much time, but really about what is the issue at hand? Like, what are you trying to solve? And really the whole purpose of that is to really put it out to industry so you allow for as many people to come forward to, that normally would never have worked with the DoD because it was too complicated, or I just didn't understand this requirements process, or it was just too many requirements that was required. So our focus really is about engaging at a level that allows for non-traditional partners to want to engage with us and really bridge that divide.
So we can do OTAs, similar to what you described, but the FAR is somewhat restrictive on us at times, and for good reason. I get that, but you sound like you have a lot more flexibility.
Yeah, it's in that regards, it gives us immense amount of flexibility. OTA is it's not a new authority, but a lot of times the processes that come with it are unfamiliar to people, or people are not sure how to employ it because they doesn't come with the normal checklist, if you will, checklist approach that the FAR-based acquisition does.
Right.
OTA, it was started with NASA, actually back in the 60s. DARPA adopted it for DoD back in the early 90s. And around 2017, Congress modified the authority just slightly, with the intent of, hey, we really should leverage this, more specifically. DIU's approach is very focused on pairing a streamlined process to the authority. So what really gives us kind of that advantage is we have a very streamlined approach that, when paired with the authority, enables us to have an immense amount of flexibility and to be able to move with speed and agility.
It sounds a bit similar to like our SBIR processes, but when we're doing those, we often have to be talking to have a transition plan. How do you do transition, or do you have to do that at all?
100%. If anything, we would say we prioritize transition as the foremost of what we do. We focus on commercial technology, so it's a high TRL technology normally. And so really it's more about the best adoption of that technology with slight modification in order to accelerate acquisition. We're not an S&T organization. We're not a DARPA focusing on the kind of that applied research. We're really high TRL technologies. And really, that's why I spend a lot of time in systems command, walking the halls, trying to introduce myself. Because our focus is, okay, how do I get this into the hands of warfighters as a sustained capability that can actually be fielded and then obviously employed over a long time. So well, as McWill or maybe some other organizations tend to focus on the S&T or maybe trying to inform a requirement, we really want to focus on like working with the program officers to have an alternative way to do something really fast.
So you've used the word accelerated a couple times. So let's narrow down. It seems self-evident sometimes that maybe our processes go slow. So why is accelerated so important in what you do and what we do?
The ability to field new technologies, emerging technologies at a rapid pace is providing those asymmetric advantages that we need on the battlefield for today and conceivably in the near future. So that's really kind of the focus there, is that a lot of that emerging technology is coming from the commercial sector. So if you look at 11 of the 14 priorities areas from Secretary Shu's emphasis on where this new technology is coming from, 11 of those 14 are coming from the commercial sector. So a lot of it, if you look at where the money's being spent, by the sheer orders of magnitude, the commercial sector is outpacing the DoD, specifically the U.S. government, by orders of like 10 to 1.
Right, we're not driving industry like we did in the 50s anymore. So.
No, and nor should we. You shouldn't have to. So we're big believers of kind of what we call the fast follower approach, which is like, you don't necessarily have to go out and drive the technology from applied research level all the way up to the point where it's fielded. That technology is constantly being updated. So we have to stay, and we as DoD just can't keep up with that because that's just how fast government or private sector moves. Let industry do what they do best, at least commercial industry. And like, hey, you develop the technology, and when it's ready to go, our job is really just to kind of swoop in and take advantage of that. This way we don't have to get messed up in a lot of their investments and what they're doing, and we can take advantage of the technology. If you look at Ukraine, that's what they're doing exactly. Now they're adopting drones, space imagery, talking about 3D manufacturing, commercial satellite imagery, secure comms. I mean, I can go down the litany of capabilities in that regard. So really, it's in our interest to kind of like fast follow that.
So let industry do their thing, get out of their way, swoop in when they hit on a solution that we love, and buy it up.
But you have to do that in a very kind of a deliberate approach. So if we come to the table though with kind of like, well, here's my 70-page RFI that's going to want to you have to answer this. Industry, a lot of them are going to be, especially the non-traditionals, they're going to be less inclined. Some will just say outright, no, I don't want to deal with it.
Some of the mom and pops with great ideas don't have the time to respond to that kind of
exactly.
RFI.
And a lot of it, it's just too hard. So we serve as an alternative to really tap into that community because we have a very streamlined approach. Because we call it our commercial solutions opening process. Our CSO is a way to really kind of lower the barriers to entry to bring these companies together, to really just give them an opportunity that they never thought to work with DoD because you have a very streamlined approach.
So in my limited knowledge of what you do, sure. I understand it's a lot about being able to procure some prototypes at called commercial speed, in finger quotes, commercial speed.
Sure.
So what does that look like on your end?
It's one of those weird things I tell general officers. I tell them, I get excited about process here. I've never thought I'd be excited about process. The only reason why I say that is because it's a very streamlined, fast process with a lot of flexibility that we think really meets your needs. And it's not like an off-the-shelf kind of like random idea. This is a very well thought out process. So the CSO is really valuable because one, you're focusing on the problem up front. So really simple. What's the problem you're trying to solve? And really what we do is we take that problem statement and we throw it out on the website. And we've cultivated with industry, we've prepped the fires, if you will. And really that's where the magic happens. And because you've provided is a single 2, 3, 4 paragraphs on your website, not a lot of requirements, just characteristics of needs, that lowers the barriers to entry. And all we ask for is a 5-page white paper or a 15-page PowerPoint. That just gets you in the door. And it doesn't cost you a thing.
Right.
So that's the beauty of it, is we're not spending any money here in this regards. This whole process is to bring it in. And from there, we have a series of phases that we get to. And that whole process, from the point you put it on a website to the point where you go to contract, is on average, about 90 to 120 days.
We live and work inside what I think of as a comfortably rigid set of requirements. They kind of focus us in a given direction. We can't go too far out of bounds. But the OTAs and the other authorities that you've got now, they very much expedite that you're allowed to apply specific instances. Are those special procurement opportunities and authorities, do you have any that you've got that maybe we don't? We talked OTAs. Do you have anything else?
Yeah. So, no, great question. So OTA is anyone in DoD can employ it. Only thing that we do in DIU is that we have a process. That's it. It's a CSO process that we love to share it. We want to give this knowledge away. We're not trying to. It's not proprietary by any means. So what that CSO process does, it gives you the flexibility that you maybe never thought you had to do. And this is really part of my challenge, is trying to educate the force. It's kind of, why I'm here on base, is to really showcase that, hey, there are alternative ways to get after your acquisition and do your prototype and to rapidly field that's different, that you just never done before. And like a lot of time, it's just getting them comfortable that OTA is a real thing. You have to be comfortable with the organization and the approach to do it. And really, it's something that we can demonstrate kind of continually with this conversation. And it's something we highly encourage collaboration. As we see it, these aren't DIU projects.
Right.
We're just a facilitator to kind of in support of the program offices to help them get after their needs.
Earlier, when you were talking about in order to respond, they only need to get a 15-page PowerPoint or a
5-page white paper.
5-page white paper. So that's kind of really lowering the bar for entrance into the shop. It's no longer you have to be this tall to ride this ride. You've really made it easier. So
yeah, no, it's part of that, and that's by design. And the point is as you said, the mom and pop shops, who have great ideas, or maybe just a small to middle-sized firm that is building out a very cool capability, primarily for the commercial sector, but never would have thought to work with DoD just because it's too esoteric. The language is, just weird. It has an odd culture. Just the divide between the two, it's just not worth it, right? You've heard the horror stories and stuff like that. So what we do is kind of just lower the barrier entry. And then we have a series of phases that we have engagement with that allows people to kind of come in with both the commercial industry side of the house and the actual, our service partner in this case would be the Marine Corps, to have less formal dialogue, but just to really understand each other's capabilities. And all this is happening before we even issue a contract. It's a flexible process that really allows more open dialogue and more engagement.
So when you talked about you're looking for high TRL projects, so a mom and pop shop could have a high TRL project capability, whatever the widget happens to be. They might be concerned that we're going to swoop in and ask them to provide 50,000 of them. So their manufacturing readiness just isn't there. Do you have a means to help them out with that, or?
Yeah, we do. So, first of all, we have to vet these companies. We have to be, we see a lot of great ideas for a lot of small firms, but maybe the TRL is there, but like you said, maybe the manufacturing level, or maybe they don't have the financing. Maybe they just don't have the backing, So what we do is we'll be honest with them. We're like, hey, good idea. It's viable, but you don't have the ability to scale this technology. Right. You just have the ability. What you probably need to do is build this out more in the commercial sector. Build out your capability to really support a broader audience, or whether it be DoD or the commercial side. And then maybe we can come back and talk. So not everything makes it through the door, not just because it's a bad idea. It's just because they're just not ready yet.
So do you encourage them to go out and improve their own manufacturing readiness, or are you able to introduce them to somebody that maybe can?
Absolutely. So we want those good ideas. Part of our mission is to expand the industrial base, right? It's all about specifically focusing on small and medium firms. So we do have an organization. One of our sister organizations within DIU is called the National Security Innovation Capital Network, NSIC. And their sole focus is on trying to make hardware investments into some of these companies. It's grant assistance. It's not an equity investment like some other organizations. It's about really just seeding the capital to give these really good ideas just enough to keep them alive. Now, in the spirit of kind of what a SIBR is,
right.
This is a little bit smaller. It's clearly not as big as a SIBR program, but that's kind of our focus. But we also encourage them, hey, go look at a SIBR to kind of get you along the lines. So,
all right. So your specific job, DIU liaisons to the Marine Corps. What does your role entail on a regular day, regular week?
So I spend a lot of time across Quantico. As I said, I kind of hang my hat at the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab on a day-to-day. But I spend a lot of time between Davis Building and the acquisition offices. So whether it be systems commands, PO land systems, or NavAir, because that's really, to me, that's the 800-pound gorilla. The ability to actually field technology is at the acquisition commands. So I spend a lot of time really just, doing a lot of DIU 101s, just kind of explaining what is DIU, what is this weird beast. But also once I get to that point of spreading knowledge is also to help curate the problems. Like, okay, say I have a program officer that is, wants a project officer or a program manager that wants to actually do something with DIU. Okay, how do I do that? Well, okay, let's sit down. Let's ask the question. What's the problem you're trying to solve? But really, it's as simple as that. And I spent a lot of time just curating this problem and working with DIU's internal team to see, like, okay, is there a commercial nexus? Is there a solution there that we think that could fit the need? So before we even spend tons of time and effort together down this road, we'll give you an honest assessment. We'll be like, well, say you want the next color in the rainbow. Great. Well, that's pretty low TRL right now. So we're not going to do that. Our focus is to give you an honest answer up front, is to say that we can do that. So we curate the problem, and then we kind of come to terms like, how are we going to partner together? And I explain that whole process to you, kind of what I was going through before, and really to kind of get to a point where they feel comfortable. And then that's really what I do. I help kind of develop relationships to make sure that we can help them, and to pair these acquisition officers to understand like where they want to, if they want to do a project with us, this is how we're going to do it.
So that would be you coming over here to Systems Command, NavAir, the PEOs, because we deal with several. What about if they go, well, we strictly speaking don't have a requirement right now for that? Do you go over to McCitic CD&I and help CD&I?
Doing that right now. Yeah, great question. So yeah, it's very common. It's often that we'll see is that the technology is so far ahead of our planning process, right? The PBV process and requirements, the JSIDs and whatnot. So it's if there's no requirement and no funding here at the systems committee, because this is really a target audience for me, because we want to accelerate the acquisition cycle really much faster than we have. If that's not there, we spend a lot of time over at CDD. So I spend a lot of time in the requirements building, talking with the CIOs to make sure that they're well informed about where technology is going. More too often, we find a lot of the CIOs, they're down and in doing their thing, and they just don't know what they don't know. Part of our job is to help bring awareness to like, where is industry going with this technology and how fast is it moving? Because a lot of times we tend to focus on what we only see. So what we do is help kind of expose them to a larger swath of the commercial industry so they can have a better perspective.
So you're embedded in McWill. You're doing a lot of very similar things with McWill. I assume you work with ONR as well. What about AFRL, Air Force Research Lab, the Army? What do you do with the other services? What distinguishes you from, say, McWill? You talked to it a little earlier, but really, where's the line?
So McWill's focus, as their mission statement says, it's focused on concept development, concept validation, support with future warfighting. Embedded in that is that there's an S&T element of that, focusing on kind of advancing a technology to move it up the TRL, in so much of how it supports the concepts. DIU's focus is really, it's focusing on that commercial adoption of the technology. There's nothing that precludes us from working with McWill to help them adopt that, to help inform their concepts. Our focus is truly joint, right? It's what we tend to find is what the Marine Corps' problems are pretty much the similar problems that the other services have. So we have a very strong relationship across the DoD to include AFRL, to include Army Futures Command, to include pretty much every organization in DoD that works in this field in the R&D world. We've had touches with in some form or other.
Do then the other services, they each have their own Glenn McCartan that is the liaison back and forth? That's
correct. So we have an Air Force rep, a Space and Navy rep, and an Army rep as well. So
and presumably you talk so that
every day. If actually, what's one of the benefits of us is because we're joint and we know that there's a lot of commonality in our problems, we tend to actually take the problem sets and we can share resources across organizations. So it's not uncommon, and we do it quite regularly, where say the Marine Corps can only bring 20, 30 cents to the dollar to a program, we can pool funding across the line. And then actually that saves money. Now you're collectively as a joint entity getting after this problem. So Marine Corps brings 20 cents, maybe the Air Force brings 60 cents. But yeah, the best part about it, if you work in the R&E world, especially OSD R&E world, if you bring to the table something that's truly joint, then you can go up, even ask for more money in that regard. So that really gives you even more of a leg up. So our ability to scale, or I should say to make the most out of your investment in that regards, really gives us an opportunity to really get you to, on orders of magnitude, I think we're at like, for every $1 that the Marine Corps puts in, to get like $1.50 back, in terms of our numbers. So the ability to just really kind of like leverage other people's money.
So that, right, as a taxpayer, I'm glad to hear that. I love hearing that when our program managers hear like, hey, we're working with the Army, we're working the Air Force. So I suppose it's not surprising to see that happening at your level as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity there that, and more too often, again, it comes down to just understanding or awareness. If you're in a systems command or a service focused kind of program, you're not necessarily going to know what else is out there. I think, what was it up? Fiscal year 23, it's $130 billion in RDT&E, I think somewhere around that number. Last year was like $123 billion. So there's an immense amount of money that's being prioritized towards R&D this fiscal year. And I think it's like 140 for like procurement in that regards. So just being able to know how to tap into that capability is really that's knowledge there. So our job is to help take those program offices that just don't have the time, or just, they're focused on their day to day, and leverage us to help, let's go find that additional money to help you really scale this program. Because what we want is like, hey, we don't want you to just find one prototype. Hey, let's prototype 2, 3, 4, 5 different prototypes at the same time. Let's do a real bake-off here and give you the chance to get the best technology forward, because that's ultimately what it's about, right? We don't want to just focus on this one exquisite thing. We want to put the best idea forward.
So here's what I love talking with you about this, because you talk acquisition concepts. You're the most acquisition-y person, a Marine I've talked to that wasn't an acquisition officer. It's refreshing having a non-acquisition MOS Marine really use these terms, and
makes me somewhat dangerous, I think.
Kudos. Well, because that's an acquisition strategy that we use here. If you look at some of the largest acquisitions we've done in the last several years, ACV, JLTV, things like that, it was multiple vendors providing, candidate vehicles, and then go out and do a drive off or a swim off, depending upon just what you're looking for. So
it's really helpful because, and I keep coming back to our process, because I'm a big believer of it, because we see it bear fruit every day. Like, the process works. So it takes us 90 days to go from idea to fielding doing a contract. And then we initially go into prototyping 12 to 18 months. So very fast in that regards. And that process is it's a collaborative process between us and our partner. So we highly encourage engagement from our partner. So it's not like DIU running off with a project. Really, we're bringing you in to be part of it, and you're part of the down select process. You're part of the actual decision making. You're actually part of when you start applying terms and conditions, right? So a big problem is like, well, when do we start incorporating requirements? When do we start incorporating these KPPs that we need against our program? Like, well, you do that part of the down select process, and you're a part of it. We're just attacking the problem from a different angle, and as opposed to doing this very the FAR-based approach, which has its processes. Our job is more about like, hey, it's more about a dialogue. It's more about you, and really the discovery occurs in the communication with the company itself, but also through the RPP in the proposal portion, and then through the prototype itself. And because we only pay off milestones, fast to fail, right? If it doesn't work out, let's cut bait early,
right?
And let's bring in a new company. Why waste that money if it's not working out? It's not working out. So it's all about speed and agility, and really how to get after it in a very deliberate way, but in a way that enables us to not be burdened by too much bureaucracy.
Talk to me about the Marine Corps Innovation Unit, the MIU.
So the Marine Innovation Unit was kind of born in the spirit of DIU, right? So that's the name. But it's a sister agency. DIU, the downside of DIU is that we're small. There's only about 100, 125 of us on a given day. Marine Innovation was kind of born to really tap into that large talent pool of Marines that are currently in the private sector that have immense skills. People that probably have PhDs in molecular biology, or work for a venture capital firm, or as an investment banker somewhere, that never would have thought to come back to the Marine Corps because they just didn't see a proper pairing for their skill sets. And it's really about tapping into that skill set. So the MIU was born really to go and really, how do we bring in that reserve talent, and how do we kind of help in the spirit of what DIU is doing, but their focus is more about very specific Marine Corps equities. So they have a lot of the similar capabilities, talent. They don't have contracting ability. DIU does have contracting in that regards. We have a very deep presence in like Silicon Valley and elsewhere. The MIU, because it's new, it tends to focus on kind of their headquarters, which is up in Newburgh, New York. But they also have a growing presence here in McWill. So what's great about our pairing together, and we're doing projects right now together, is, DIU brings a very joint perspective and our ability to do rapid. We have a very established process working with commercial industry. Marine Innovation Unit is the ability to actually go down and in within the U.S. government and actually look at existing solutions. So we have an existing project right now, for example, that we're working on with DC Information for Lieutenant John Glavey. And our approach to this is we have a DIU MIU approach. So DIU's approach is to go look at commercial industries, see what commercial solutions can be provided. MIU is focusing on more like what is already existing in the U.S. government. If anything, we found in this, and you find in this world, you've been doing this long enough, the good idea has already been talked about. Well, the good idea has already been kind of funded somewhere. You really, the Marine Corps, obviously being that, we don't have a lot of money to go around. How do you go find these good ideas? You need bandwidth.
Is the MIU able to reach to you? You said they don't have contracting authority. Right. Can they then come to you and say, hey, can you try to throw some dollars at that problem over there?
Yeah, in a way, it depends on what it is. If we have an existing contract, yes. We're not a contracting shop that we're just going to go out and just contract on your behalf. It's tied to OTA. It's tied to our process and what we do. But yeah, we're still trying to figure out how to do that. I know MIU wants to get there to do their own some type of contracting support. I don't know exactly all of it yet, no details. But yeah, right now we're kind of helping each other out in terms of just identifying what capabilities are out there, and then bringing to the table. So when a commander, in this case DC&I, we give them the whole breadth of solutions that are out there from a commercial industry or what's already existing in the U.S. government.
I don't expect you to have the answer to this question, but how did they avoid being called the McIU? I mean, that's the way we do acronyms around here.
That's right. I don't know. I think it just worked well. DIU, MIU, brand associations. So
because every time you say it, you're just saying the Marine Innovation Unit, so it's not Marine Corps Innovation Unit.
Yeah. It would have been great. There's always a good name out there. It's going to emerge.
I mean, there's only so many great Scottish, acronym type things that you can do with Mick whatever. So
McIU, yeah.
McIU. So
there you go.
I don't know why I thought of that, but I appreciate your chuckling with me on that particular question. All right, so your team has worked with Syscoms on vehicle electrification. Tell us a little bit more about this.
Sure. That's a great program. And that's a great example of what commercial technology can bring to bear. So tactical vehicle hybridization, formal name. So this was really actually originally an Army project, so funded by the Army to really just capture anti-idling technology. If you drive your car today, right, most modern cars, they have anti-idling technology. Pull up to a stop sign, your car goes down and anti-idles. It starts pulling off the battery, right? That technology has been around for 10 plus years now. So, and that's built out of the commercial sector. So TVH, Army program, I went over to CDD, talked to the great team over there and said, hey, you guys consider this? I'm like, oh, what is this? Well, the Army's already paying for this. So with a small amount of investment, we'll do a quick prototype for you. So it really just kind of started from a conversation. We brought down a team, did a quick demo, but because we already had the contract, we didn't even have to go through a whole new competition because we already all had the contract available. All they did was had to adopt the technology. So working with Austin Petway up there over in LCS and CDD, and working with the team here at PFM LCS, fantastic team. And we really just kind of came together and said, hey, do you want to do this for the LBS? So, and this was great about this technology. This was really just, they saw like, wow, you can move with speed, but the technology is really innovative. I mean, it's really just an adopted kit that you put on top of the drivetrain. So in lieu of using your fuel for when you go to idling situations, right? So we were in Iraq and Afghanistan, you spend 30, 40% of your time, just idling, spending fuel. TVH was like, okay, when you have these Marines idling for hours, instead of tapping into your fuel source, your combustion engine, hey, now with the TVH, you're just creating a secondary battery source that's basically feeding your entire comm system, keeping your position. So you reduced your fuel consumption. So this is actually a real capability. That technology, somewhere in the $20,000 to $30,000 a kit. I mean, if you think about that, now you're extending the life of your program by years,
right? And
with a very quick turn-on capability. So this is really just adopting what's already out there. It's very common in the commercial industry with a lot of the truckers out there.
So I do this podcast for the command as kind of my part-time side gig. My real job is I'm the safety director here at the command. And so what do you know about the safety of the electrification of these vehicles? When I think of batteries and whatever, we work in a saltwater environment. Some people say electricity and water don't mix. As a safety engineer, I say I think they mix exceedingly well, all too well. So what about these batteries? Do you do any safety evaluation on that?
No, I was not there, so I'm not going to get ahead of my skis. But yeah, your point is right. So, and we've had this conversation. There's a big concern about lithium-ion batteries on ships, and then is this appropriate if we go into deep fording? Is this going to be a capability? So, Yeah, no, I don't have a lot of information on it. I'm not gonna pretend I will. But this is something that came up as, is this something worth exploring? Is it creating a system like a single source of failure against it? I don't think it is. But this is, part of it is the risk taking. And this is why you do a prototype. Right. So, but what's the beauty of this is we can put this on a truck. We can do a rapid prototype over 12 months, and either we can find out the flaws and then make quick modifications with the company. And the beauty of this process is that you're working with dialogue with the company directly, and you do a quick turn and you allow them to do that. And hopefully you can come to find a mitigating solution that allows us to continue on with the project. Or if it doesn't work out, you cut bait and move on. And what I found is you tend to people say, oh, the acquisition community, they're very into their own little world. But I think just the opposite. I think they're very cutting edge in thinking. But a lot of times sometimes they just don't understand the processes or what else is out there. But if you give them the runway, if you give them a chance to kind of go fast, break things, to fail fast, they're going to run with it. So this has been really exciting. And I go back and I tell people, acquisition community wants to move fast. They just need help, or maybe just need new ways to think about how to approach this. So it just reinforces what I think a lot of people believe, is that there are great people out there that want to do this. We just need to help educate them.
What other projects have you worked with? Maybe some of our other Syscom PMs, anything.
Current project right now is what we call Stable Tactical Energy Expeditionary Power with Todd McMahon. Again, with LCS.
LCS again.
Great team. Reinforce success, right? But Todd's been a great PM, PM for this project. Good example of how we can save time and money. Todd came to us. I gave him a DIU 101 over at McWill. He was part of a whole consortium of kind of energy experts. He said, hey, Glenn, I got this problem. We've got this focus on, we're trying to do smart generators to make energy generators more efficient. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's something we could probably help you. The commercial sector spends quite a bit of time. This is a big focus on the energy side. So he's like, hey, but I want to kind of help curtail my timeline. I'm looking at 2 years out here, potentially, based off what we're hearing, on to build a solution, a prototype, and really to be able to scale this, through over the next 2 years. So he's thinking, well, this fiscal year 25, he's not going to be able to get a solution to get to LRIP, right? How do I get to this basic milestone? To his credit, he took risk, and that was, he didn't have to do that,
right.
And that's really where that's the ask for a lot of it. So the money that you would normally have put towards maybe a project for a prototype, this is probably the big ask of DIU, because we are not a pot of money. We're really just we're funded really just to appropriate ourselves. We ask the funding that you would normally use for your prototype, you would put towards this project. The nice part about DIU is we don't charge any fees. So just to show that, good faith in that. So
no fees is the price we look for.
It tells you more about what we think. So, and Steve was a great project because, we're like, we're industry is, we can, if you incentivize them correctly, they'll move fast. They're still in down select. They just finished up phase 3. So Todd came to me in June of last year. We spent about 3 months or so working on problem curation and really just kind of getting the mechanics down of how this is going to work. And then we just put it on the website. And their initial market research was, there's only really a kind of a handful of companies that really can get after this. And what we gave them was, it was an open competition, and we had over 42 companies come forward because now we've lowered the barriers to entry. So they're in down select now. And what's great about this process is that we went from a conversation, problem curation, put it on the website, into down select. Now it's going to be February, right along with our timeline. And we're going to put 2 companies probably on prototype, on contract. And we're going to spend the next 12 months. So we were able to accelerate his timeline by 18 months. And what you've done, and this is really, we talk about transition, right? The beauty of OTA is that we've done a competition up front. Now that we've done a full vetted competition, where, the whole process, if you have a success memo on the back end of this, now you can have sole source justification to go to milestone B or milestone C. So you don't have to go back and recompete this. And now you can either do a production OT off this, or you can do a farm-based OT. This is all about how do you accelerate the process. This is how we do it. So we were able to save him. We think we saved him a lot of money. We'll see how the contract comes out. But I think it definitely shows that, one, you can actually do a bake-off and put all these different companies to do an apples-to-apples comparison in a very fast way to really get after a solution that allows them to to find their needs and save them an immense amount of time.
Is there anywhere, so all these mom and pop shops we were talking about earlier, is there a list of things you're looking for? Is there a website where they can go and look and just see, what?
Yeah, sure. So DIU.mil,
Okay.
very simple. So we have a commercial solutions catalog. We have about 100 active projects going at any one time. We have also about 50 plus that have quote unquote transitioned, that have basically received a success memo that anyone in U.S. government can basically just pick up that and write. And any contracting officer can write a production OT or a FAR-based OT or a FAR-based contract to production contract to scale this technology. So go on the website, go to the commercial solutions catalog, and you can see the listing of all the different capabilities that we've already brought to bear.
DIU.mil is pretty easy to say and remember. So
Pretty easy.
But before I let you go, we have a couple questions around here that we call the lightning round. Are you ready to field those questions?
Let's do this.
When you were a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Want to be a Marine.
A Marine.
That's
So
right.
is your lifelong ambition?
Well, I played with a lot of G.I. Joes as a young man, so I've always had an affinity towards the military. So pretty much the military was going to be my life. I knew that in some form or another. So it's always been on the forefront.
Well, I'm glad you got exactly where you wanted to be. If you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be?
Teddy Roosevelt, 19th century, obviously one of our presidents. I read a book by him, read his bio. Fascinating guy, just immense story, but just a great character, strong character, and just had a clear vision of how to change things, as an institution. I just admire that in that regard. So I'd love to spend some time.
Do you have any tips for maintaining a work-life balance?
Pick your partner correctly.
Okay.
My wife is amazing. She's amazing in her own right. She works for the State Department. So we have 2 young kids together, trying to balance that. Work-life balance is making sure that you, obviously you want to focus on your career and that, but make sure you put time away to support her career. And also just make sure that you prioritize your family because, in the end, that's what it's about.
Someday the uniform will come off and the family, you still want them to be there.
That's right.
Absolutely. What is a TV show, book, movie, or podcast that you would recommend?
Innovator's Dilemma it's a Harvard Business Review old professor. It's talking about how large organizations, how they have to innovate. Really good talking about within an organization, how do you innovate faster when you're really bound by processes that you already do. And it's a really fascinating book, really just about talking about how you got to carve out space for that innovation sphere. So highly recommend it.
Lieutenant Colonel, I really appreciate you coming in today and having this conversation with me. You talked earlier about sort of a DIU 101. Maybe you can just point people to this podcast in the future and they can listen to it.
You know it. So this is great. Thank you so much for the time. I'm on base. Make a plug, McCartan at DIU.mil.
Okay.
Feel free to email me or reach out. I'm really just a conversation away. I'm pretty easy in that regards. It's more about just understanding your problem to see if we're a fit for what you need.
Again, I appreciate your coming in. I've enjoyed the conversation. Your lightning round is going to give me at least one book to go and read. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Appreciate the opportunity.
This concludes another episode of Equipping the Core. I hope you've enjoyed our conversation today. If so, please take a couple minutes to leave us a review, subscribe, and tell your friends about us. Until next time, stay safe. This is Tripp Elliott signing off.